Hello, everyone, and welcome to this first edition of a new movie review series on this channel entitled The Triple Feature Showcase, where I will talk about not one but three feature films that share a similar theme or genre, or perhaps even an actor or director. And this idea was basically inspired by the time I watched one film and it was so good, and I started thinking, do I have more films like this in my collection? The answer is likely yes. So instead of one feature, we talk about three, and therefore, without further delay, let's get started on today's three films. The three films featured in today's video will be discussed as follows. First, we begin with Bird with a Crystal Plumage, and then followed by The Cat o' Nine Tails, and then finally Four Flies on Grey Velvet. All three films are Italian Giallos, and all three were directed by Dario Argento. Beginning with Bird with a Crystal Plumage, I have to say I enjoyed this film tremendously and was surprised by how much I enjoyed it, considering that my relationship with Dario Argento's films is a bit of a touch and go situation. It sports a very well rounded storyline that constantly builds tension and suspense. The performances from each and every cast member is top notch. There isn't a single cast member I could say was exceptionally terrible or one that stood out over the other in terms of how great they were. Each and every actor did a superb job. Undoubtedly, Dario Argento directs his film with incredible style and flair, and the cinematography is always good looking, and here it's no exception. In fact, it is great in this film. He directs this film very well. It moves at a very consistent pace. As I've said, the story builds lots of suspense and tension throughout. And the score, which this time is composed by Ennio Morricone as opposed to Argento's frequent collaborators, the band Goblin, is really well done. It actually sets the mood, it creates an incredible tone throughout. I can't really praise the score enough. Now, I hardly have any issues with this film. If there was any issues, this is a bit of a nitpick. It would be the dubbing, and that is actually a gripe I have with almost all of Dario Argento's films. Here, it's actually done all right. It doesn't make the film sound completely like an anime, but it is noticeable in parts where the lip movements and the words being said don't entirely match up, but for the most part, it's actually well done, making this entry a good start to this overall experience. Secondly, we have the Cat o' Nine Tails, which I was looking forward to coming off the buzz from Bird with a Crystal Plumage, and I have to say this one started extremely strong. Again, with a story that had me hooked, incredible characters as well as great performances. Of course, there's a few characters in here that stand out a bit more. There's the old blind man who is referred to as Cookie by his niece, who also happens to be a very great character. Our lead actor we follow in this film has a ton of charisma, is very likable, and the other characters intended to be dislikable are actually also very interesting. And again, the cinematography and the direction, as well as the score, again, is just as good as it was with Bird with the Crystal Plumage. It moves the story along pretty well. The film looks great. There is quite a few wide angle shots showing tremendous detail, and the use of color, as in with Bird with the Crystal Plumage, is also outstanding. But overall, this film wasn't quite as good as Bird with the Crystal Plumage because around the second act or midway through the second act, this film starts to feel like it begins to drag consistently, and there are moments in this film which do not entirely make sense, and even a few strange interactions between characters. And when it gets to the third act regarding the killer reveal, at that point I didn't really care about what was going on anymore. I didn't even care about who was really committing all these crimes. I basically clocked out because of the pace that had slowed down so considerably. Whilst I did like quite a few ideas and the overall concept of this film, the back half of this movie is really what let it down. Although the cinematography and direction, as I've said, is still consistent in comparison with Bird with a Crystal Plumage, this one was somewhat of a disappointment, even though it started off really strong. But of course, I still looked forward to the third film I had lined up in this experience. So far, very strong beginning. Here's middle end. And third, we have Four Flies on Grey Velvet. Now, this one I honestly enjoyed the least out of the three. Although, when it came to the cinematography, the direction, and the score, again by Ennio Morricone, that remained consistently impressive. But as for the performances, there were a few actors who weren't quite as good, and their characters are, I would say, range from being really dull to really annoying. However, there are three characters in this film that I did like. There was a gay private detective played by Jean-Pierre Mariel, who was a very likable character, and another one played by Bud Spencer. I just can't remember the character's name. And of course, a third one where I can't remember the actor's name, but I think I do remember the character's name being Mirko. I might stand corrected on that. Those three characters could have had their own film and it would have been very entertaining, but since we have a lead character here who is incredibly dull, and it's not the fault of the actor, I didn't think he was particularly terrible, but his character is just plain dull. He's this rocker or this drummer for a band who really doesn't have much going for him except he's being stalked by an unseen murderer who seems to want to make his life very difficult. Then, of course, we have the character who is his wife. She's basically the most annoying character in the entire film. She knows how to do three things in this entire story, and that is basically breathe hard, talk as if she's scared, and cry. And I lost interest in this story much quicker than I did with the Cat o' Nine Tails, as I didn't really care about what was going on, really. And when it came to the killer reveal, I rolled my eyes tremendously, but I'm not going to spoil it. It's just the reveal itself didn't really do anything for me. And also regarding the reveal, I actually saw it coming from quite a few scenes before it happened, because in the previous two films, the killer mainly spoke in a whisper, as he did in both Bird with a Crystal Plumage and the Cat o' Nine Tails. Here, the killer also speaks in a whisper, but the voice of the killer in this film is very distinct. So even though the killer whispered, I could tell you exactly who the voice belonged to. And those were my thoughts on the individual experiences with each film. Now, to basically criticize the experience as a whole. The first film, Bird with the Crystal Plumage, was very strong. I enjoyed it tremendously. Great cinematography, great direction, great score, and the use of color is outstanding, as well as the performances featuring many likable characters and interesting dislikable characters. With The Cat o' Nine Tails, a film that started off extremely strong, had my interest immediately, also featured quite a few interesting characters, but when it reached the midway point through the second act, it basically started to drag, and when it came to the third act, it felt like it was moving at a tortoise pace. And I didn't really care for the events in the final half. And lastly, it ended off on quite a disappointing note with Four Flies on Grey Velvet. So overall, strong beginning, so middle, and very disappointing last half. So that was your triple feature showcase for today, and given that I am the psychiatrist, and in grand psychiatric tradition, I'd have to ask, how did the opinion of this particular showcase make you feel? Until the next time, I hope to see you back at the office in good spirits and health, and until then, I bid you ta.